Good Tuesday to you, everybody. Income 731. Welcome to the second video of week 2. Kabam. Let's try a little tea this morning, because I think I've had just about enough coffee. As good as it is hot. All right, everybody. This is the second of the 2 videos that I post week by week, in which I give you some feedback on your weekly discussions and or assignments. I may, remind you of a due date that's coming up, stuff like that. All right, so let's dive right into it. Now, as I think I mentioned in a previous video, I won't grade your discussions until probably, I don't know, about week 5, maybe 6. All right. The best way to maximize the points for your discussions is, number 1, to the best of your ability, answer the prompt. But most importantly, number 2 is respond to your classmates and respond in a way that's substantive. And what do I mean by that? I mean something beyond, oh yeah, great point. I thought the same. It's like, okay. Sorry for the disapproving look, but come on. Give other folks some feedback that helps them. But as long as we're on the subject of giving something to other folks, be sure that you answer the questions in a timely manner. All right. And yeah, I've got some tape on my hand because I have a pretty serious burn here on my thumb that I keep rubbing. The logo on the tape says GOAT tape. It's something we use when we backpack. It's like monster sticky. Okay. But anyway, make sure that you answer all the questions, and make sure that you answer them before Sunday night at 10:30. Not everybody is hanging around and they don't have time to respond to your post. And since their response is dependent upon your post, don't hold them hostage. Okay. All right. Let's go back to week 1. Let's take a look at the questions. Let's take a look at your responses and see what you did. Question number 1, what do long-term plans have to do with dynamic presence? Provide a link to an article or journal, magazine, newspaper that somehow links these 2 variables together. Okay. Charles, let's take you. And by the way, if I mispronounce anybody's name, or if you prefer to be called something else, send me an email and I will make it so. Okay. Long-term plans depend on dynamic presence. The choices made in the present affect the validity of long-term planning. This effect was displayed in a longitudinal view, a Stanford marshmallow experiment, which tested children's tendency towards impulsiveness. Findings exemplified by the lives of 2 siblings, Carolyn and Craig, demonstrated that delayed gratification predicts higher function down the line. And this is from Hoke. Yeah. So, and I'm not trying to sell you a system or anything specific, but by way of a communicator and a communication professional, which is what you are. All right. I strongly recommend that you develop felicitous communication regimes within yourself. That is, learn how to speak to yourself in a way that speaks to yourself. And I don't just mean, how you address yourself or what sort of things you go over. I mean the whole system. So again, I'm not trying to sell you a system, but I cannot highly recommend enough a system in which you are actually planning out what it is that you're doing. Okay. In week by week fashion, and in a way that correlates to the larger picture. So I just happen to use this type of planner. It's by a company called, I think it's Clever Fox. Okay. But one of the many things that I like about it, and I mean, some of these planners, my gosh, there's more work in putting the stuff into the planner than there is doing the work in the planner. And it's just like, okay, that's enough. All right. So, I am, this sort of self-awareness discovery sections they have. I go like, yeah, okay, I'm very much aware of myself. Okay. But I do like the vision boards. I do like to use the mind maps that they have in here. If you're not familiar with what a vision board or a mind map is, look that up. It's very, very useful as a communication tool. Specifically, it helps you be present and mindful to you, which is key for your long-term plans. But let's go back to you, Charles. In both the experiments and later life, Craig exhibited impulsiveness that resulted in poor career choices. Results that, I think you mean his sister Carolyn, who demonstrated less impulsiveness in the experiment and greater success in her life. The suggestion that more extended vision is affected by subcomponents also captured by Hoke in the prologue, that the holistic approach takes into account the whole system of causes and effects. The activity, therefore, of the dynamic present are intertwined with future results that should be an inherent part of future planning. All right, and then you link out to a piece by DeRocha and Gutierrez, Lessons Long-Term Management from Northern Hake, numerous entries, etc. So from Regent. Okay, excellent. Very well answered. All right, good job. So that's the connection between the two. Now, by the way, if you came up with something, or if you weren't sure, and there are a couple of you that said, yeah, well, I didn't really see that in the text, and we're going to get to one of those questions specifically, then go back and look at it again, because what's going to happen for the examination portion of this class is I will pull material from the Canvas discussion, all right, and then I will create questions. Some of them will be, true, false. Most of them are going to be you writing a little bit. And so I may ask you, I'll say, Hoke links dynamic presence to long-term success. Please explain. Something like that. Okay. That'll be part of the final comprehensive exam. So if just sort of as you get to your rhythm in this class, if you don't get what it is that I say, okay, yeah, this is it right here. And I'll make sure, I love reading from everybody. Okay. Go back and, quick look at the text. Okay. Question number 2. What major points about talking while working were you most impressed with in chapter 3 of Everything Connects? Please explain. Now, with a question like this, I'm leaving it open to quite literally what jumped out at you. But for the examination, for the final, I may have something like, true, false, or multiple choice. Hoke uses the following analogy when talking about, when dealing with openness in a work culture, that is, can people talk or not? And then you'll fill it in. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at the answer. Ranesh, I like what you're up to here. And you write, where did you go, Ranesh? I just had you right here. Okay. I love the focus on relationships, which requires time for nurturing. We no longer work in an era in which we try to make everything as efficient as possible. Rather, we're trying to be more agile and more innovative. Okay, true. For innovation to flourish, we first need to spend time on relationships by understanding how the team defines what needs to be resolved. Einstein shared his perspective. When shared, he would spend 55 minutes in understanding a problem and 5 minutes solving or resolving it. Okay, excellent. Okay. And so what Hoke is getting at here is, maybe you do, maybe, you work in an environment, I hope not, in which you're sort of separated off into little cubicles and nobody talks to anybody else, and there's no interaction, and there's no openness. Okay. Most workspaces, and I would suspect, I don't have data for this, so I suspect that we're being moved in this direction as a workforce by the increasing interactions that we have with each other over social media, in which it's no longer a monologue. That is, there's a boss, and then there's all of us little, poor souls down here. I'm going to use this sort of analogy, and she goes, or he goes, rah, 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 and everybody goes, and then they just do their little thing. Okay, we're now in terms of how we interact socially, much more accustomed to a dialogue in which everybody has to have something to say about everything that somebody said, and there is an openness and flow. In fact, Elisa, sorry, again, if I get your name wrong, let me know, give me a flick on the air. I found the point about reptiles and mammals to be very interesting and reliable. An office full of mammals will breed employees that feel safe and secure enough to risk innovation. Unfortunately, I've been in some reptilian offices, and oh man, have I as well, where employees are so afraid of doing something wrong that the only thing they feel comfortable doing is exactly what they're told. In this case, there's no room for creativity, innovation, and partnership. And that often spells the death of a company, an organization. Okay, so good points, both of you. Okay, let's take a look at question number 3. What did the authors of Everything Connect devote a whole chapter to authenticity? Why? Again, here I'm asking your opinion. Now, it might happen on the test that I'll say, tell me why. Tell me why they dedicated this chapter, a whole chapter, to authenticity. And what I'll be looking for in your response is something that indicates to me that you actually read the chapter. Okay, so technically, even though on a test I might ask you for your opinion, it is a question that you can get wrong. All right, anyway, but let's see what you said. Cheryl Hoken, and I think he pronounces his name Bear. Discuss the journey of Paul Schlake, LinkedIn's Director of Global Solutions and Services. Throughout the chapter, Schlake talks his realization that his life became more about his title than who he as a person is. After an ebb and flow of meditation, Schlake finally adopted mindfulness as a practice and used meditation, becoming more self-aware. Knowing who we are through daily practices and devotion is a long process, but well worth the time. I worked with leaders who, despite being 3-star general, was as true and authentic as they come. He still rode a Harley. He was very understanding and sincere in his leadership practice. What resonated with me was his saying, people and plants grow towards light. His way of leading others and helping them grow. Excellent, excellent point. And again, I'm not necessarily trying to sell you anything. I'm looking for a book that I thought I had right handy, but I guess I don't. On that note of sort of self-reflection, if you like, I cannot recommend highly enough that you spend some time in you can call it prayer, you can call it meditation. You could do both. I myself practice a method, and I should say, let me qualify what I'm going to say before I say it. Yeah, I know. That my prayer life and my meditative life, in terms of the activities, those are separate. But in terms of the objective, they're the same. Okay. So on the meditative side, I practice a method called the Wim Hof, WIMHOF. Just look it up. Just Google that. WIM, M as in Mary, HOF, Wim Hof. And he's a Dutchman. And it's a technique that involves breathing. And actually, it's a technique that involves specifically not breathing. That is, you breathe in and out a certain number of times. Usually for me, it's 40. Okay, there's that crossover because 40, the number signifies completion. How long did it rain? Well, we say 40 days and 40 nights. Is that an exact calendar tabulation? We don't know, but it's not the point, because the answer to the question is, how long did it rain and did the flood last? Well, until it was done. Until it was done what? Until it was done cleansing the earth. All right. So anyway, so for me, it's typically 4 breaths, deep breaths in and out, 40 deep breaths in and out. And then on the last one, out, and then not breathing back in. And there's a whole science behind lowering your carbon dioxide and then remaining in that state that I'm not going to go into here. If you want to know more about Wim Hof, email me. I'll tell you on the other side. But I do that each morning, and then sometime during the day, usually in the morning, because it's a time where it's quiet. I'll do my writing and stuff like that. then I spend time with Scripture. Okay, and I read Scripture just because of my background and what I've done. I read it in Latin. It is Biblia Vulgata, and I sort of have the system in which I read through the whole New Testament, and then I go back and start it again. And I'm actually, in recent days, I'm back starting it again. Now I'm just in the Gospel according to Matthew. Okay. Anyway, enough about me. Let's get back to you. Question number 4. Why is personal identity an important variable when understanding how people make important connections in organizations in today's mediated world? See, and that's the word mediated is the clue. Ranesh, I'm going to go back to you again. Our personal identity depicting our authentic selves allows us to connect with colleagues, clients, and customers. Our personal identity also creates trust, which increases our potential value. This is important in today's mediated world to accelerate our connections, which opens numerous opportunities for us to deliver services and products. With these connections, one can be a writer, publisher, speaker, coach, and consultant in their area of expertise. We can connect both on an individual and collective level. Very true. All right, very true. But I want you also to note that part of the reason what Hoke and et al. Is getting at is you got to know who you are, especially in a mediated world, in a world that tempts us by way of repetition, of representing ourselves as something we're not. Now, this is a very human failing. It's not new to the digital age, okay? But our ability to engage in it is magnified, is opened up, is by way of demonstration all around us, okay? I mean, even in just, even if someone has given you the straight story in a bit of connected media, especially when you start, putting artifacts in there like images and sound, there are all sorts of filters and things that can be used to present a picture that's not authentic. Okay, so know yourself. And by the way, as communication scholars, pay particular attention to this throughout start with your personal relationships. Well, your intrapersonal relationship, your relationship with yourself, and then relationships with those close around you. Identity. Everyone is striving for an identity. And if you can see what it is the individual is striving for, this opens up a whole new supply on your part of understanding and empathy. Now, I'm not saying a license. I'm not saying, therefore, anything goes by way of behavior. And I'm talking about your spouse, your children, your coworkers. Like, no, right? Your ability to get the message that's below the message, the superficial, the presentation of the identity that they want you to see, or maybe even they want to see themselves. If you understand what that is, then you can start figuring out what it is they're saying to themselves and trying to say to you, and you'll have you'll be in a much better position to decipher their communication and understand what it is that they're up to. Okay, question number 5, because some of you are still waiting for your texts. Okay, what is neuroplasticity? How can mindfulness through neuroplasticity help us take steps to be successful communicators? Okay, Candace, let's take you. Because your answer raises a point that I want to touch on. Okay. I was really excited to read this question. I was just preparing a lecture for my students about listening, which entails a brief discussion of neuroplasticity. With that aside, while Hoke does not explicitly define neuroplasticity, and you are absolutely correct, there is nothing in that little blog post that went over to Business Insider that addresses neuroplasticity. All right. And I remember, in fact, Candace, back on question 1, you wrote something like, as far as I can tell, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. I'm not going to get, and Candace, this isn't to you, this is to everybody. I'm not just going to hand you, say, okay, find where the author says ABC and repeat that back to me. If if there's not some explicit discussion of this within the text, this is sort of my wink nudge to you as the class that you need to go find it out, because that's true. I mean, you'll note that what I didn't say in this question was, what does Hoke say neuroplasticity is? All right. I wanted you to know. I wanted you to go find this out. Okay. And as a communicator, this is at least, in terms of a process, this is something important that you should know about. Okay. So, Candace, I'm not beating up on you here, but you make a good point. All right. That the author doesn't discuss it explicitly. I asked the question the way I did purposefully because I wanted you as the class to go digging a little bit. Okay. Neuroplasticity's article, he links out to an article, bing, that describes mindfulness, which is the primary topic of the article, as self-directed neuroplasticity. In our text, however, Hockenberg defined neuroplasticity as the ability of the brain to change itself. In other words, as we take in new experiences, our brain continually adapts based on what we learn. Excellent. Spot on, as they say. Okay, but then how can mindfulness through neuroplasticity make us more successful communicators? Okay, so here we get to this, Candace. As mentioned, Hoke draws connection between mindfulness and neuroplasticity. Also in our textbook, Hoke describes mindfulness as meditation in which we focus on breath, through which we practice, we can develop a more nuanced, articulated understanding not only of the events happening outside of our bodies, but those happening within them. This is where neuroplasticity comes into the picture. Bam, baby. The brain has the capacity to rewire itself only if we have the capacity to be aware of its capacity. And now that sounds, redundantly circular, redundant, but it's true. This sort of mindfulness and mind-body connection is used in a lot of areas. My thing, man, where I'm really sort of in my groove, is deep wilderness trekking. I mean, I'm out on a trail. Well, not now, because number one, it is blazing bloody hot where I live, and number two, the heat draws out, and I use this word with intent, swarms of ticks, which, okay. But, and that's usually about 2 months out of the year. So I have to just do something else. Outside of that, I am on a trail 3 or 4 times a month, at least. And then every 3 or 4 months, I'm on a medium, what I would consider, a medium-sized trail. Like for me, this weekend, I went out and, rode 25 miles on my mountain bike, and that's like, that was a short afternoon because I had stuff to do and I had to get back to the house, and blah blah blah. So anyway, so I'll go out on a medium-sized trek, which will be somewhere around 10, 15 miles. But then each year we'll do a really long trek, something at least 50 miles, usually up towards 100, and we're out for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days. We carry everything on our backs, and I love every second of it. But in order to stay in the kind of physical condition that I need to be in order to do that, I do a lot of resistance training. I do that all year round. And one of the aspects of resistance training, not for me, but for everybody, is a real focus, a mind focus on a particular muscle or muscle group that you're trying to strengthen. And so you're actually thinking about, say, an arm while you're doing something that works an arm or a leg or whatever. So what Hoke is getting at, and it sounds kind of, sorry, here comes the pun, hokey pokeys or hocus pocus, okay, which is a corruption of Latin from hocus corpus meum. It's not. All right. As a communicator, develop really, really strong intrapersonal, talking to yourself, communication skills. Let me recommend, as I often do, I want to pollen. camera folks back. Okay, apologies. I usually have everything right here with me. If you're not familiar with Jordan Peterson, let me recommend a couple of his works. First one, I recommend 12 Rules for Life. And then these follow up to that, Beyond Order. Now, on a much more academic and complicated level, it was his first book, Maps of Meaning. All right. But in these books, especially in 12 Rules for Life, one of the things that Dr. Peterson points out is before you decide you're going to launch into project X, Y, and Z, and especially if you're touting it for the public good, clean your room. Now, it doesn't, this isn't, literal, like get in there and pick things up, which doesn't hurt. Okay. But what he means by that is there really isn't an effectual way that you are going to be able to walk through the necessary process of organization, planning, and communication about large problems if you have not developed that same capacity when it comes to small problems. Same principle applies. All right. If you're going to be a good external communicator, learn to be an excellent internal communicator. And that means developing those pathways between your brain and your brain and your brain and your body. And, why not? You live there. Okay. All right, everybody. Good job with the discussions. Make sure that you post on time. You're being kind to your classmates. Okay. And again, after about 3, 4, 5 weeks, I'll grade these. All right. And turn them in. So make sure that you post your paper topics. All right. There's a sheet over there in the assignment section. All right. You can pull those down. And if you have any questions about the reading or what we're doing, I hope all your books have arrived. Right. Please make sure when you email me, and I'll get to you as soon as I can, email me through Canvas. Okay, everybody, have a great week. Take care and see you online. Bye-bye.